Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're going over some important news in the 2026 Texas Senate race, where Democratic State Representative James Talarico is reportedly going to announce that he is running for this race. Now I am recording this the day before Talarico is expected to enter the race. I'm recording this on Monday, September 8th, but the information is pretty solid that Talarico is jumping in, so this video is going to serve as my Talarico is entering the Senate race video. Now, this is very interesting news, though not very surprising news. James Talarico, who's been expressing interest in a potential run for a few months now, is going to officially enter the race on Tuesday. The state legislature has been considered a rising star in Texas, conducting dozens of national media interviews after he and his fellow Democrats left the state to hold up President Trump's led plan to redraw the congressional map in the state of Texas, including Talarico going on Joe Rogan's very popular podcast earlier in the spring as well. And you may remember, if you saw this clip, that Joe Rogan even said that Talarico should look at running for president in the future. That's how much he spoke of him in the way he was communicating in that podcast interview. So Talarico is certainly someone Democrats are looking to rally behind potentially for the 2026 Senate race. Now, this quickly is getting very interesting for Texas in 2026, and I'll explain why. This Senate race already has a very competitive primary underway on the Republican side. Republican U.S. Senator John Cornyn is up for re-election, but he's facing a very formidable primary challenge from the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. Now, John Cornyn has faced a lot of criticism in the last few years or so, especially by Ken Paxton, of being called a rhino, a Republican in name only, and someone that has not been loyal to President Trump. Now, for Trump's part, he has not made an endorsement in this race yet, though Trump has essentially said multiple times now he likes both Cornyn and Paxton and that they're both loyal and friendly to him in their own ways. So thus far, Trump has remained neutral in this Republican primary, though I would expect come primary day, Trump will likely make an endorsement and a decision in this race. But thus far, he has remained neutral. And the early polling thus far, despite Cornyn having a lot more endorsements from notable politicians than Ken Paxton has shown early on Ken Paxton with a pretty large lead over John Cornyn. Now, there is still about 15 to 20% undecideds or so, but Ken Paxton's been leading over John Cornyn for a while now, until about the month of August, where the four most recent polls show a lot more of a competitive race, with one poll showing a 5-point lead for Paxton, one showing a 1-point lead for Cornyn in the Emerson poll. Echelon Insights has Paxton up 5, and then Coefficient has Paxton up 3. So certainly narrowing up. Now, on the Democratic side, the only Democrat that's certainly, I would say, well-known is the 2024 Democratic Texas nominee, former U.S. Representative Colin Allred. He is running again, and before Talarico entered this race, was looking to be the likely Democratic nominee. Two of the Democrats are running in Emily Morgul and Michael Swanson, who really don't have much of a chance in this primary. Another Democrat, Terry Virts, a media personality and retired astronaut, is also running, though given his name ID and popularity compared to Talarico and Allred, it's more likely than not Virts probably does not have much of a chance. But with James Talarico entering this race, this is a very competitive Democratic primary now underway. And this was something in videos I remember covering a few months ago now, Democrats in Texas were hoping to avoid, where they're hoping to run very competitive Democrats in every statewide office. There's U.S. Senate, there's governor, there's lieutenant governor, there's attorney general, there's Secretary of State, there's really everything up. And Democrats were hoping for a sort of dream unity ticket where they could all run for one respected office and put up very formidable candidates in all of them. They're hoping to avoid competitive primaries. That does not seem to be the case now on the Senate side, where Colin Allred will be facing off against James Talarico. And this is going to be very interesting, because the early polling thus far of the Senate race shows Colin Allred clearly leading over all the other candidates, already breaking 50%. But in the hypothetical polling, where James Talarico's name is included, it's a lot more close. Public Policy Polling, which is a Democratic-affiliated pollster, shows Allred versus Talarico is an 8-point race. Allred at 40, Talarico 32, with still 27% of the vote undecided. An 8-point lead in a primary is honestly not that big of a lead compared to a general election. Primaries can be very hard to predict and can be very unpredictable, and this makes this race very competitive and very close. Though Allred does start out with a lead, that undecided vote will decide who ends up winning. The only other poll that featured Talarico versus Allred came from Texas Southern University, which also showed Allred leading 50 to 43. So with again 7% undecided. So thus far, based on the two polls we have to go off of, at least at this current point in time, even though Talarico is getting all this national praise and national attention, at least thus far, it looks like Colin Allred has a little bit of a slight lead in the Democratic primary to actually beat James Talarico in this primary. So we'll have to wait and see how that all shapes out. Now, whether it's Allred or Talarico advancing to the general election, they're going to be facing either John Cornyn or Ken Paxton. And thus far, it seems to be offering two very different possible general elections, where the early polling thus far does not really feature James Talarico for any of the polls, only Colin Allred at this point, but it shows that Ken Paxton seems to perform worse in the general election than John Cornyn does. Emerson College's most recent poll had Cornyn leading Allred by about 7 points with 17% undecided. Now, for Paxton versus Allred, only a 5-point lead, 46-41. So at least for Colin Allred, the Democrats have a much better chance against Ken Paxton than they do against John Cornyn. And I bet when we get the first polls involving James Talarico in the general election, we're probably going to see similar numbers, where he'll be losing to John Cornyn probably by around 5 or 6 points, and we'll probably see him doing a point better or two against Ken Paxton. So we'll have to wait and see how that all goes. It's hypothetical for right now. Now, Texas's election history has been pretty interesting because at the presidential level, we just saw it go Republican for Donald Trump by 13.7% in 2024. The Senate level, we also just saw it vote for Ted Cruz by 8.5%, not as large as Trump's win, but still a likely Republican win, though under 10 points. But in 2020, John Cornyn won by 9.6%. 2018, Ted Cruz only won by 2.6% against Beto O'Rourke. So in the Democratic midterm environment, where everything went the Democrats' way, we saw Texas fall under 3 points in that very close race where Beto O'Rourke really became a national star for the Democrats. Could James Talarico potentially catch fire and become a national darling the same way Beto O'Rourke did and cause a very close Senate race in Texas in 2026? Given the right election environment, I think at the very least that possibility is out there. Now for Texas right now, I do still think it starts out as likely Republican with in between a 5 and 15% margin of victory. But again, clarity in the Republican primary and James Talarico versus Colin Allred would also clear things up a lot in this race and potentially give us a better idea of how this race is shaping up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Make sure to leave your thoughts and everything down in the comment section below. Also, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you never miss when I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching again, and I hope to see you in a future video.